Ropeless fishing is probably the only long-term solution. Ropeless fishing is probably the only long-term solution. Ropeless fishing is probably the only
government agencies say vertical lines and ropes are a leading cause of injury and death.
The commercial fish community want to kill the right whale lobster.
This is the industry, and they want it shut down.
In just the past decade.
There's towns like this town, the town of Vinalhaven, up and down the coast of Maine, but when you get out on the islands with a ferry that's at no bridge, you're here and it's just fishing. I've had my own boat since I was about 13, so that's about 20 years, I guess.
This is what I know, this is what I do. Lobstering, I mean, that's the whole thing. Eat, sleep, and live it. My boys do it. My daughter married a lobsterman. My grandchildren think lobster boats are the greatest thing in the world.
Any kid on these islands have got it in their blood. They should have access. They should be able to do what I've done in my lifetime. I've been lucky in my fishing industry. I've always tried to do good. I've always helped out the younger guys. I've outfitted people with traps and helped them with boats and whatever I can do. It's a way of life. Everyone helps out one another, and it's one of the best honest livings that you can make.
He loves it. He loves fishing. He loves lobstering. He just loves the water. He's happiest when he's out on the water.
Sometimes you'll think you're gonna be rich, you won't. Sometimes you'll think you're gonna starve to death, you won't. Maybe you can't get that new truck or the roof done, but you'll get through it. And that's the beauty of lobstering is start over, January, clean slate, new year. What happened last year happened last year. You know, what's gonna happen this year? Every trap you haul up is a different thing.
Lobstering's freeing. Most people on the island, they get up in the morning, they go to work, they go home, they hang out with their family, their friends. They just want to be left alone.
What's more important, protecting endangered mammals or keeping Maine's lobster industry out of danger? Recent court rulings favor the protection of right whales, and they're putting a squeeze on how and where lobstermen can go after their catches.
There's no whales in Area 1. When there's a sighting, they put them on an app on my phone. I look at it daily to see where they are. They're not in Area 1 where we fish.
You know, I'm relatively young and I've got a long way to go, hopefully in a career of fishing, and I just feel like the new whale rules are definitely going to affect this town, the whole coast of Maine.
Johnny McCarthy and I, we're best of friends. He's on the MLA, I'm with the union, but we're all fighting at the end of the day for the same reason, to stay alive in these communities.
And nowadays, they've taken the wind out of the sail of some of these guys with all these crazy rumors of doom and gloom.
Fisheries are at risk due to climate change.
We're predicting that the American lobster habitat will continue to move further offshore.
So the Gulf of Maine lobster fishery is losing its sustainable seafood certification. That comes from a nonprofit based out of London. The lobster industry will not be able to sell to certain markets around the world.
The attack, as they call it, is from the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California, urging people and businesses to not buy Maine lobster, because they say the industry threatens the survival of the right whale.
We have people trying to put us out of business by hurting us financially with absolutely no scientific evidence. Actually, the evidence is to the contrary.
There is no information. What in the hell are these people thinking?
New restrictions may be coming from the feds. Regulators have said in the past they want to see a 90% reduction.
We've reached out to both NOAA, the environmentalists, to participate in this panel, to come to the table and have a discussion. They declined, but we have spoken to them in the past, and my colleague Greg Lagerquist is here to summarize some of their arguments.
Thanks, Jen. As you mentioned, both NOAA and environmental groups declined to join our panel, but environmentalists who've sued over this issue applaud the new rules.
It's an incredibly important conservation measure that provides right whales with at least some relief from deadly lobster gear. More certainly needs to be done to help save the species, and we think the final rule should actually go further than it does currently.
I wish on the whale front that people could see they're not where we fish.
I've never seen a right whale in my life.
There's no whales up in here. There's no They've said themselves that's why they don't even fly the planes down around here in my areas, because they know they're just not here. And I think some of these rules and patterns sometimes are just like, who is coming up with this stuff?
New restrictions on lobster harvesting off the coast of Maine.
Earlier this month, a federal judge struck down an effort that would have blocked new federal rules that are intended to protect endangered right whales. Those rules include limits on where and how lobstermen can fish.
What they've known their whole life is going to be gone in one stroke of a pen for something that is not a problem as far as the whales go.
I would like to know why they want us out of the way. We're not hurting a soul. Tell us the truth why we can't go fishing. We're in the way. Big money is coming in and pushing us out of the way. We've gone along with the state and regulations and everything that we have been told what to do.
The lobstermen have done everything that they've been asked to by National Marine Fisheries and DMR. You ask us to do it, we do it.
We're the common people. The feds and the wind and the whale people, they say that we have to work with them. They won't put us out of business. But this is the end. They are going to put us out of business if we don't say no. And all we want is a fair shake.
The wife had got a hold of me and said, there's a lady down here that's going to do a story on the whale rules that are coming up. She needs fishermen to talk to.
I sat right here on this wharf in my truck with the reporter. Her name's Penny Overton, and we talked for, I don't know, an hour and a half probably about what this story was going to be like, or what their intentions were, at least the way I was led to believe. And, you know, the way it was pitched to me, Portland Press Herald, Boston Globe had kind of teamed up and was going to do a story on the next round of whale rules, how I felt they were going to affect this community and fishing in general.
You know, she had this different spin on it, and she told us they wanted to show how all these new regulations would affect the community of Vinalhaven.
If they were going to come out and follow us around, do stories, and actually portray us as we are, I think that would be a terrific thing, because that's the only way we're going to get our story out.
I was all about it. I thought it was great. Finally, a media outlet, a Press Herald or a Globe, is going to really spend some time in a fishing community and actually get how we are, you know.
I invited her into my house, on my boat, my buying station, everything. Treated her like gold. I thought she appreciated what I was doing. And the article came out, and I'm the scum of the earth. I'm somebody that they want to erase, get rid of.
It was a shock to see when it came out what it was. They definitely had an agenda.
We're all pirates, we're cutthroat.
She made us look like a bunch of hicks.
It ended up being an article about climate change.
In the end, what you've told here is, yes, it's a story about people, about lobsters, but really it's a story about the temperature in the Gulf of Maine.
We asked fishermen, what keeps you up at night? And their answers, which ranged from everything from offshore wind development, right whale rules, and they all had a common thread. Even though they didn't all feel like it to start off with, they're all under the umbrella of climate change.
In my opinion, they had their story written for the most part. They just wanted some people, names, pictures to plug into the story.
People were really blindsided by it. They thought that their voices were going to be heard.
It's sickening what she did to us.
We had invited her into our house. I'd taken them to Hall a few times. We'd gotten to know each other pretty well. And then to get depicted as people that deplete resources, don't care about any kind of the climate change. You know, we're all about just burying your head in the sand and just working real hard. Might not know any better, and I don't think we get portrayed fairly.
And she's taken a story that should be the heart of America story of good people, and she made us look like criminals, hicks. She said it was all the editors. They took one of my friends, Johnny McCarthy, and I, made us look like enemies. Him and I respect each other and get along. It's the way of life on Vinalhaven.
We never had any kind of a conflict. I just happened to see him in the restaurant the next morning, and we kind of looked at each other. I guess we can't be friends anymore. You know, we gotta be enemies. You know, and we had a good laugh on that.
I got to give a lot of credit to Penny. She was on the island before I got there, laying incredibly important foundation of trust, which is what you have to start with in a project like this. There was some work to be done to build trust, and I think, you know, we found some ways to do that.
I am extremely disappointed with the tactics that they used, pretending to be our friend.
Befriending some of the people on the island who are a little bit like gatekeepers who could open the door to other connections and other interviews.
We treated them like friends, and they used us.
I saw this as my chance to finally get to Vinalhaven. I think they appreciated the investment in time.
It definitely kind of set in like, well, they didn't care what I really had to say, and they didn't even take what we said, a lot of it, and they just spun it around into what their story was already going to be and plugged us in.
Climate change is like a big story. The journalists struggle with how to write it. How do you tell a story that big? And sometimes you've got to start small.
This is obviously not a new story. It is a new approach to the story, to tell it as a human story and as a very individual story in which the people are as important as the science.
We can show that these are people, real people grappling with problems in a time of climate change.
Offshore wind might represent an opportunity to help these folks from a dying industry. These folks from a dying industry, or soon to be dying industry, or near term to be dying industry, move into something else.
When my wife read it, she was very embarrassed. I was kind of devastated and felt betrayed and misled.
What Penelope did, she does know what the truth is, but she didn't print it. She hurt a lot of people.
I know I didn't like how I was portrayed in the article because it made me subservient to him, and all I did was wait on him and do this and that, and it's like, no.
As far as I know, Gene is very involved with their business. They're a team just like Allie and I, and the Press Herald got it 100% wrong.
For Tanner to go through what he did, for that woman to write about a 15-year-old kid, that was hateful, downright hateful. He was heartbroken. You don't talk about family stuff like that. That's ridiculous. What kind of people are they? Just take her article, read it, see what she did to us.
I have no idea how you can justify it. I really don't. It's just...
It was awful. The whole story, I'm embarrassed by it still. Environmental groups literally have deep pockets that will never be empty. That's what's so scary about the whole thing.
We've got something great, and they're trying to take it away.
It seems like the government has their agenda of what they want to do with the Gulf of Maine.
There's too much heritage here to ruin just for greed. Goliath, look out for David. We ain't even begun to fight yet.
Penny, you remain on the lobster beat for the Portland Press Herald. So do you anticipate, following up with these folks and continuing to tell their stories, or what's your hope?
There are so many stories from Vinalhaven that I would still like to tell. I'm going to take a vacation for a little bit, so we'll see.
Well earned.
Right now, I think the lobstermen are sick of me. I think I'm kind of sick of lobster, so I think I want to take a little break. But I think, we're still going to keep telling lobster stories.
So that is Vinalhaven Untrapped, which I'm really excited about. I'm so glad that I got the same people who were highlighted in the Lobster Trap to participate with this project because they were not pleased at all with what came out at the other end of the sausage machine at the Portland Press Herald and the Boston Globe didn't represent at all the story that they had shared with the folks reporting. What gets me about this story, the Lobster Trap, is the reporters spent months there. They spent months on Vinalhaven. They interviewed, I want to say it's over 100 people. They recorded interviews with, man, I would love to have access to those raw interviews because I know from what people said, the real story is there. The real story of what faces fishing communities, I know the real story is there. The amazing thing to me is that the whole offshore wind issue, it gets like, I want to say 2 sentences in the whole very long piece. 2 sentences, and it's just like, it was like, maybe fishermen could be retrained to become employees of the offshore wind farms they despise. Doesn't explain why they despise them. Doesn't explain any of... There's no critical examination of it at all. And so the Lobster Trap series, you read it from beginning to end, it is, in some ways, technically well written, but it is a case of what I would call serious journalistic malpractice. Just considering the amount of time and resources that went into making it and how unrepresentative it is of the actual views and lives of the people featured in it. You know, this documentary that I'm trying to make, Vinalhaven Untrapped, I spent 2 days on Vinalhaven. I mean, because it's an expensive trip to undertake. There's one motel, there's not a bridge, obviously, so you've got to stay the night. It's not really easy to get back and forth. Would have been nice to do a few different trips, but it's just, it's off the beaten path, for sure, Vinalhaven is. And I'd never been there before. But just in the course of a couple days, I captured enough, I think, to make this whole story. Would have loved to have been able to, get the Boston Globe or someone like that to pay my tab to rent out a place for a couple months and just work the whole time and interview all sorts of people and just really explore the island very closely, but did what we could do. And yet I think what we got is so much more impactful and meaningful than ultimately what was produced. The Lobster Trap, it really reduced everything that fishermen are dealing with to climate change. That's it. The whale regulations are just a manifestation of climate change, nothing more, nothing less, really. I think for the general public, the people who I'm kind of aiming this YouTube channel at, which are, if you're in a fishing community, you know what's happening. You don't need this necessarily. But I want people outside of fishing communities to see what's happening, to see how fishermen and the people around them really are, and to see how dire the situation is. It sounds impossible, this whole red listing, lobster's unsustainable, and that's really what they're hearing. They're hearing the red listing stuff. They're not hearing about the federal regulations and what that means. They're hearing about right whales that might be tangled up in stuff and what's going on with that. That's who I've been trying to kind of aim these videos at the whole time that I've been working on this project. And for those people outside fishing communities, they have not been prepared at all for what's happening. The newspaper they subscribe to told them last year that, lobster fishing has some nice quaint things about it and about these communities, but really it's going the way of the buffalo because, climate change, the waters are getting warmer and the lobster are all leaving. There's a radical oversimplification of certain data points and also a huge jump to conclusions that we're going to kind of examine closely in this upcoming feature-length film. But folks don't really, they don't realize how near the potential total destruction of the seafood industry is. I really think that examining the Lobster Trap and getting the people from it in their own words to really share what happened to them and what they wanted to get out there that was omitted or minimized in the story, and the pieces that were left out completely about the bigger picture of what's going on in Maine. I think it's important to get this story out there, even though it's something that already happened. It's a story that already ran. But man, I don't even know how to quantify how many people that story has been pushed out to across the country, let alone New England itself. But of course, producing videos that have at least a modicum of professionalism, hopefully, or especially trying to pull together a full-length movie by yourself is something that has an expense attached to it. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work, not a ton out of pocket, but of course, all of the time that I pour into this project is time I can't be putting into jobs that pay the bills. So, yeah, like I mentioned, I'm about $6,000 short in terms of the expenses that it takes to finish this particular film, which there's still a number of weeks that I need to put in to do it. I mean, it's going to be a lot to get it done by December, but I really want to have it done by December to release it on the 1-year anniversary of when The Lobster Trap came out. I think that's really appropriate for it to come out at that time. And I mean, this is a by donation only volunteer effort that I've been doing here on this YouTube channel. And you know, people have generously contributed for me to be able to take time off from work as it was to do all of this stuff and to go out and shoot these different projects. And of course, we don't have anywhere near what some of these companies, like the people making the documentaries about right whales, really kind of building that narrative against fisheries. I mean, they've got, I don't know, they've got 6-figure budgets easily for what they're doing, not just in production, but promotion, going out and having all the events, doing the road shows, renting out the venues and having screenings. I'm hoping that once I get this project done, I'll be able to raise enough to try and do at least one screening, maybe a couple of screenings and Q&As with folks from Vinalhaven. Whoops, bashed into the keyboard there. You know, this is so professional, but the point is, I think we've done a lot with a little. Everyone who has volunteered time to help out with these projects and be in them, let me film them, or helped out in various ways, and certainly the dozens of you who have donated, you know, over the winter and spring especially, a whole bunch of you contributed for me to have a budget to work from so I could really focus on churning out as much content as I could to tell these stories as possible. And I appreciate that so much. And also the few businesses who are have been sort of silent partners and helped out. That was also enormously helpful. And I couldn't have done it without all of you folks. Everything we're doing here, if it was just being by myself, I really wouldn't have been able to do a fraction of what we've turned out here. As you're all aware, the war on fishing has been ramped up to a really an unbelievable speed, certainly, at which the attacks are coming. And I think getting these stories out there is, it certainly is a passion of mine. I want to keep doing it. And for this particular project, but I really can't do that much more without your help, honestly. So if you work at, or you know someone who works at, maybe a bank or some sort of business that has a fair amount of capital that they could put towards projects that benefit your community and who want to show support for our fishermen, certainly the primary thing has been to support the fishing associations in their efforts to advance the industry. But I also think this marketing, communications, getting stories out kind of method I've been doing is important for the public too, to have something other than what's churned out by the likes of the Portland Press Herald or the Boston Globe. So yeah, any kind of businesses that want to sponsor, partially sponsor this upcoming project, certainly the feature film or just the other stuff that I'm doing here, it would be enormously helpful for sure. Because I'm one person, my very small video production company is pretty much tapped out at this point. We don't have the resources of like a TV network or a bigger media outlet. But any companies that want to pitch in and help get these stories across the finish line can give you advertising space on there. If you want to be silent backers, as a number of people have so far for me, that's fine too. The email address, again, if you want to reach out and contribute in some way, is mainreset@gmail.com. And certainly appreciate each and every one of you who's helped me thus far. And for any companies that have not pitched in yet, this would be a great time. And hopefully by December of this year, we're going to have Vinalhaven Untrapped complete and ready for everyone to view for free, so we can keep getting the message out there. Thank you all for watching and sharing.